Hi, hello. Just to give you a heads up, there will be swearing in this episode. There will be sex in this episode. There will be a man about to shout loudly in your ears in 30 seconds. You can't say I haven't warned you. Cheers. Enjoy the episode. I'm getting out of here. I don't need this shit tonight. I'm leaving this guy to jerk off on his own and I'm going home. He takes a folder out of his bag. He just wanted, well, Christ only knows, but he wanted something. I didn't know if he was apologising or trying to be kinky. I'm older now, but on that night I wasn't, and that screwed me. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Okay, welcome along if you are a new listener to Extraordinary Stories. And hello if you are an old listener who's been listening for a while. I hope that you are all well. I hope everyone's doing okay. So it's been a busy week for the podcast. I'm pulling together the special episode number 40 and we're on number 38 right now, so it's not far away. So that's been busy. It's been a really busy week on social media. The Facebook group has discussed a wide range of topics this week, including haunted toasters, Natalie Woods, Idris Elba, serial killers, love songs, where would you hide a body, goats, and the fact that I accidentally last week put up a picture of a man wearing very short shorts accidentally showing one of his balls. Yeah, I picked the image really quickly and it was just meant to represent party. I put it up and then lots of people got in contact with me and they were like, have you noticed that this man's bollock is hanging out of his short? And I hadn't noticed. Anyway, so it's been busy. So get involved socially if you're not already. Okay, before I get to the story, 6 names to shout out for you. Hello, Anna Hooligan. Hello, Karen Marshall. Hello, Lainey Miller. Now, Lainey, I think you're also in Glasgow. I think you are a Glaswegian listener to the podcast. Hello, Wendy Tracy Mills. Hello, Lorraine Ledwell. And hello, Joe Hopkins. Okay, are you ready for this story? Okay, let's go. Let's start with where and when. So it's Detroit, a suburb of Detroit called Farmington Hills. A quaint town, it's quite old-fashioned, homely, welcoming. It's described as looking like something from a 1950s sitcom. So it's just a little suburb outside of Detroit, and I think that this description that I found of it sums it up wonderfully. It says, if Detroit is a menacing Chevy spewing smoke and burning rubber kind of place, then Farmington is an old-fashioned bicycle, drifting peacefully down the sidewalk. A pretty nice way to describe that town. So the town's got bars, it's got restaurants, it's got motels. Now there's two characters I need to introduce you to. The first is a young woman named Tina Bigger. And it's really Tina's story that I'm going to be telling in this episode. The second character is a man called Ken Cranchina. And now, how I'll tell you this is I'll tell you their stories individually up until the point where the two of them will collide into each other's lives. So let's start with Tina. Tina had moved to study at a university just outside of Farmington. And she lived in the quiet little suburb while she studied. Tina had grown up in a military family, and so she'd lived in many, many states across America. So the idea of moving independently for university, it didn't really faze her. She was a very capable and very bright young woman. Again, every description of Tina, I kept coming across the same phrase, and I've said it before on the podcast, I hate it. The phrase, all American girl. It's such a meaningless statement. It doesn't mean anything. I know that it evokes an image, and I know that when I say it, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about, but it just does my head in, because I just find it really annoying as a sort of catch-all for women, for girls. She's an all-American girl. What the fuck does that mean in 2018? It means, okay. So the words used to describe Tina include vivacious, beautiful, bright, confident, and determined. So it's 1991. She is deep in her studies and she works in a clothing store as a part-time job, and it's there that she meets a young man called Todd Nurnberger. He is a local to the Farmington area. Tina and Todd, they begin to date quite quickly. They fall in love pretty fast, and for a little while it looks like it's all lovely in their little world. They're quite an odd looking couple. This is kind of an aside, but when you see a picture of them at first, I thought I had the wrong image at first, because I was like, she's this like 22, 23-year-old, very attractive blonde. And I'm not judging, right? I'm not judging. But he kind of looks a bit like he should be the local bank manager. Like, he just looks way, way older. It's just a bit of an odd... I mean, I know, like, opposites attract, and you can't, you can never guess who someone's partner would be. But there's just something a bit odd when you look at the image of them. So Todd knows everyone in the town because he's grown up there, and he helps Tina to get a better job as a student. And that better job is somewhere called the Chop House. It's a really, really busy restaurant in the town where the wages and the tips are good. So a pretty good gig for Tina as a student. A good, working in a restaurant, getting your tips, making some money. In my student days, I had the worst job ever for a very brief period, which was I used to sell nuts in Glasgow Central Station, Glasgow's main train station. It was the worst job of my life. So it was like this sort of bizarre square layout and me in the middle of it, like some sort of old-fashioned style market. I'd be like, "Can I interest you in some cashews, madam? Excuse me, sir. Can I interest you in some macadamias?" And he'd be like, "No, get in my way. I'm trying to catch a train." Oh, it was awful. I absolutely hated it. So, Tina's got her job, and she is basically making, on top of her wages, she's making about $100 to $150 every evening that she works. Were all the other waiters and waitresses making this in tips? No, they weren't. Why is Tina making it? Well, it's a sad fact, and this sort of thing does my head in, but Tina was blonde, she was attractive, she was outgoing, and she chatted to customers. Such a grey area, that whole thing. I really hate it, that whole, you're the more attractive waitress, so you'll walk home with more wages, more tips than anybody else. But it's a sad fact, but that's just how it is. So now her and Todd, they move into an apartment together. They rent a very small apartment in Farmington, and they're having a great time. They are working, studying, partying, doing what young couples in love do. Now, between them, Tina was actually making a lot more money than Todd was. He also worked in another restaurant, but the restaurant he worked in wasn't doing altogether that well, and it sort of brought them money problems into their very young, very early relationship. Todd was beginning to resent slightly the fact that Tina was the one bringing in the money, and Tina was beginning to feel the pressure of being the person who was bringing money to the relationship. So she's still studying, she's working hard during the days at university, and in the evening she's working hard in the restaurant. And an opportunity comes up for Tina, and she is excited by it. She's given the place on a research team who are going to go into Detroit and conduct research with sex workers. The grant for the research comes from the Department for Disease Control, and it would be Tina's job to go meet with sex workers and discuss with them what methods of disease control they might use, if any. So she would start to conduct interviews on a daily basis. She was really into this. It was exciting for Tina. And as I said, she was pretty confident. She was really self-aware, and she relished the opportunity to chat with people and have conversations. So now this is where things start to change a little for Tina. She really gets into this study much, much more than she thought she would. And when the university study is finished, she decides she's going to conduct her own. In the same field, in the same area, she's going to continue talking to sex workers, and she's going to conduct her own research project. But she decides this time that she's spent enough time talking to sex workers who work on the street, and instead that she wants to conduct interviews with escorts, with the women and the men who are considered to be the class above your common sex worker. Okay, at this point in the story, I'm going to introduce the first of 4 short speeches that I've transcribed from interviews I've found with various escorts. We'll call them the escort speeches. Number 1. I think the men I saw were looking for sex. They wanted to have sex, but they had no idea that they wanted more. And I wanted to scream at them and say, "You want more than sex, asshole. Why can't you see that?" But I didn't. I couldn't. Because that's not my job. It's not your fucking job to tell another human being what they need. No, it's not your job. Now, in her relationship with Todd, well, things are not going very well. They're burning through Tina's wages. They're struggling financially. They've got credit card bills, and Tina decides at this point that she just wants to move out on her own. She wants to get her own space away from Todd. Now, it's not that she wants to break up. She just kind of wants her own space. So she does that. So she gets herself a little place, not too far away from where they had lived together, but it's her own. It's her own little place. So she's kind of living sort of between the two places, mainly in her own home. And just to add a little bit more to Tina's bad luck, Tina crashes her car and the cost of repairing it is ridiculous. So rather than fix it, she goes to a car dealership to look at getting a new car. But when she goes there, she doesn't go alone. She's with a mystery man. It's not her boyfriend, Todd. Let's pause on Tina. Let's introduce that second character, Ken. Okay, we need to talk about Ken. Who was he? Well, he was a man in his 30s who grew up around the Detroit area. And ding ding, cliche phrase number 2 coming up. He grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. That's, so many times I've read this about Ken. Grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He spent most of his late teenage, early adult years in trouble with police. I mean, never anything too serious. Never anything really violent. It was like a little bit of theft here or there, a bit of drunken behaviour. And so he was in this kind of cycle, you know, the way that so often people fall into that cycle. He'd have like a month in prison, be out for 2 weeks, and then 2 months in prison. And then he'd be back out, and then he'd be in prison, etc., etc. So this was kind of what was happening with Ken. So he's doing his best, actually. It's 1994, and he's really doing his best to stay out of trouble. He takes a job at a car garage, and he's really trying to be on the straight and the narrow. Ken's described by his co-workers as a genuinely really nice guy. A really hard worker. Ken had rented a little apartment in Farmington, and he didn't have a great deal of money. His job didn't really bring him much money. But what money he did have, he spent on the one passion in his life: sex. Ken would use his wages to buy escorts. Now, it's said of Ken that the one thing he actually wanted was a relationship. He wanted desperately to meet a woman, fall in love, and settle down. And although he dated lots of women, it had never turned into love. And so, in the absence of love, he went instead for escorts, where he could buy a few hours here and there with a woman. Okay, escort speech 2. Okay, this guy arrives. He has a bag and a bad wig. And he's really nervous. He's really shaky. Really itchy. I don't trust him. And I feel like I need to get out of this room quickly. We're in a hotel and I'm thinking straight away, I'm walking. I'm getting out of here. I don't need this shit tonight. I'm leaving this guy to jerk off on his own and I'm going home. Then he takes a folder from his bag. Holy fucking mother. This contains some really old photographs. I'm talking grandparents, his fucking wife. Why is he showing me his wife? His kids, his grandkids. And this fucker is trying to tell me their life story. Trying to show me the photos. Eventually, he puts the folder away. We had the kind of sex he wanted. I just felt sad for the bastard. Okay, back to Tina. So when we last left Tina, she was conducting interviews with escorts. Her and Todd were still together, but not living together. And so now we go to March 24th, 1994, where Todd goes to see Tina at home, but she isn't there. So it's the evening, it's 9 o'clock, and he gets to her little apartment. She's not there, and at first he doesn't really think much of it because she's been doing a lot of late night shifts in the Chop Shop restaurant to make money. And now, as I said, they're not living together, so they're not in and out of each other's pockets quite as much, although they are still a couple. So there's whole evenings Todd won't see Tina. In those evenings, he's assuming she's working at the restaurant. Anyway, Todd waits. As the restaurant normally closes around about 11 o'clock, he thinks, well, she'll be home soon. But she's not. So he calls the Chop Shop and they say, no, she wasn't working tonight. The call's brief. It's really short and Todd's left really unsatisfied by this call. So he wants to double check and he calls the restaurant back. And this time he gets one of Tina's colleagues who he knows. And he explains the confusion. He says, I thought she was working. And I don't understand why she's not home now. And he's about to be told something that's going to confuse him even further. Tina hasn't worked in the Chop Shop restaurant for nearly 3 months. That whole evening, Tina doesn't come home. The following morning, Todd calls Tina's parents to ask if they know where she is. And they don't. So really quickly, her family, they arrive in Farmington that day to help Todd see if they can track down Tina. So in search of her, they go to the university. Tina's professor, he explains, no, I haven't seen her in days. So they go to the police. I mean, Tina's father at this point, Bill Bigger, he is doing everything that he possibly can to find his daughter. So he begins to get hold of her phone bill and starts to see some numbers on that phone bill that cause concern straight away. And the numbers are to and from an escort agency. Now this concerns her dad Bill greatly straight away, but not so much our boyfriend Todd. He doesn't really get that concerned by it because he's like, well, no, actually, she was doing a project where she was looking at escorts. She was interviewing escorts. So I don't really think it's anything to worry about. I mean, Todd, look at the facts here. Come on, man. Don't be an idiot. She's told you she's working late nights at the restaurant and she's not. She's now got phone numbers on her phone bill to and from an escort agency late at night. Come on, man. Put the facts together. So in her apartment, her dad and Todd, her boyfriend, they start pulling it apart, seeing what they can find. Can they find anything? And in a wardrobe, buried under some clothing, there's a bag that's obviously been meant to be hidden. And in this bag, they find condoms, lube, and various credit cards. So it starts to become clear that Tina had gone way, way further than just researching escorts. And that she had become one, and this is how she was making a living. The kind of agencies Tina was working for, they weren't too shabby. The women who worked there could earn up to $300, $400 per appointment. So, I mean, this is a nightmare for Todd and for Tina's family. Not only is she missing, they've also discovered she was secretly an escort. So Tina's father hands over the information to police. The bag, the telephone bills, and the information that they have learned from the car dealership where Tina got her new car. Tina's dad, Bill, he went to speak with the car dealership and they said, yeah, we remember Tina. Yeah, we remember her coming in. Yes, she bought a new car. She leased it from us. And he asks, who was with her? And they say, it was a man. think his name might have been Ken. So police run searches on computers, they try all their databases, and they come up with a few Kens living in the suburb. But they only focus on one, Ken Cranchina, who we've already discussed. So I said Ken did have a record, but it was all sort of low-level crime. So they go to Ken's house to visit him, and he's not there. There's a woman in his house, and she won't let him in. So police, they show this woman a photo of Tina, and she recognises her straight away. And she says, yeah, I do remember this woman. She's been to visit Ken a few times. So the search went like this. The police go after Ken, trying to track him down. Tina's father went after the escort agency and demanded to learn all that he could about the places his daughter had visited. I mean, what a grim thing to have to do. Grim, anyway, because your daughter's missing. But imagine having to actually speak to an escort agency and be like, okay, can you tell me where she last was and who she was with? And it must just, for that family, it must just been horrible to have to ask and try and access that kind of information about their daughter, who they thought was just working in a restaurant and studying at university. So the little town, described as an old bicycle on the sidewalk, was really shocked by this news, and it leaked to the newspapers. The stories began to spread that the lovely waitress from the chop shop was actually a hooker, an escort, a woman of the night. These are not my terms, these come from the headlines at the time. Now a week passes and Tina has still not appeared. Her father, eventually, he gets a bit of luck here. One of the escort agencies, and he's been trying them all, he's tried every agency in the area. One of them gets back to him, and he begs the woman, begs her to break her silence and tell him if there's an escort on their books matching the description of his daughter. And thankfully this woman, she says yes. She confirms that indeed Tina has been working for them under the assumed name Crystal. So Ken, he was a regular user of the escort agency, and a former worker there describes that when a client calls, this is how it goes. A client can't actually directly ask for a person that they want. Instead, they have to describe what they're looking for. So, tall, blonde, brown-haired, thin, blue eyes, brown eyes, etc. So what Ken had worked out quite quickly is that by giving the description of Tina, he would ensure that she would be the one to arrive. Having met with Tina once, randomly, for an encounter when he just called up one night, Tina had been sent. He knew exactly what to ask for each time he phoned without trying to sound too specific. He would casually tell the phone operator actually quite a clear description of Tina. So Tina, under her assumed name Crystal, was meeting Ken regularly, and the detective in the case, he uses these words: they had developed some sort of relationship. What was that relationship? Escort speech 3. He would always be so quick about sex. Really fast, and I knew it was never about sex. He would do this thing where he would try and say some words into my ear while we fucked. and I could never hear them properly. I didn't know if he was apologising or trying to be kinky. I think he was sad. I mean, I never knew that at the time, but I just think he was sad about him. I mean sad about himself, or maybe sad about his life, or... Anyway, I've always remembered that guy. He wasn't scary. He just wanted... Well, Christ only knows, but he wanted something. So where we're at in the story of Tina is that she is still a missing person, and Ken is a person of interest. During the search for her, Ken calls the escort agency, and they know who he is. They have a sort of caller ID system, so they, for the safety of the escorts. So Ken's called the agency, and this is odd, I think. This is a bit of an odd moment in this case. The escort agency don't call the police to report that Ken is phoning them. Instead, they call Tina's dad. I think that's odd. I think it's an odd move on their part. Obviously, Tina's dad, Bill, he's been having a lot of communication with this agency and saying, if she ever contacts you, please let me know straight away. I'm trying to find her. But I think also when, at this point, the story is everywhere that she's gone missing, why would you not be calling the police first? I don't know. So police trace the number to where Ken is. So Tina's dad is the one who lets the police know very quickly. This man that we're all interested in, this Ken that we think might have something to do with it, he has called the agency again. So police are able to trace the number to where Ken's called from, and it's a bowling alley. By the way, I just think it's an odd image. Him calling an escort agency while wearing a pair of bowling shoes. It's odd. So the police head down and they say to Ken, okay, look, come with us. We need a chat. We need a chat about Tina. And what comes from the conversation is really illuminating. Now, it contains a moment in this which I'm sure you will feel exactly as I did. I had an... Oh no, what the fuck did you do that for? Why did you do that? It contains one of those moments. Ken tells the police this. Yes, he knows Tina. He met her as Crystal through the agency, and they would meet regularly in a motel room. Then he says they would meet at his home. And this is the moment that I warned you about just a second ago. Tina tells Ken to stop going through the agency and to just contact her directly. No, come on. The agency is your only protection. It's the only thing to protect you. Oh, God. And this was just not even just Ken. Tina had gone freelance, if you like. She was giving out cards in bars, and she was meeting men not through the agency. Just dangerous. It's just so dangerous. So what police surmise from the conversation is that they think Ken is probably really in love with Tina, and that he, in his head, either thought this was a relationship or desperately wanted it to be a relationship. Okay, but again, the big question. Ken, where is Tina? He says she's out of town for a few days, and that he was expecting a call from her any day now to let him know that she was back. Sure thing, mate. This leaves the police with nothing. So the police say, okay, well, we don't have much to go with here, but We'll leave you alone if you can tell us where Tina's car is. And he says, yeah, okay, fine, I'll tell you where it is. He lets them know the location, they go. But it turns up nothing. There's no clue of Tina in the car. It's just parked in a garage. So the thinking around this changes. And people start to wonder, did Tina actually maybe want to disappear? Had she vanished of her own free will? And you know how I love those stories? I absolutely love those stories, the ones where people just vanish, just go from their own life. I find them really fascinating. Now, Ken's the only suspect at this point, also. And they're not getting anything from Ken. So her dad comes out, he speaks to the press, and he says he does not care what Tina's job was. The fact she was an escort does not bother him. It doesn't bother the family. They just want Tina back. So this was all that people could talk about. The quiet little suburb was completely in shock. And it comes again, that great phrase, the all-American girl, the college student turned escort, right under their noses. I mean, this wasn't a sleazy city. This wasn't a hub of sex. I find it really strange. Those when a sex scandal rocks like a little town. I just find it so odd because I just think, do people really imagine that in your quieter suburbs there's not just as much sex going on as there is in a city? Of course there fucking is. People are having sex everywhere. I just find it so strange when or even there's even stories in Glasgow or Scotland, little villages get rocked by sex scandals, and I think, how is that a sex scandal? Do you think that just because you live in a nice, homely, as I said earlier, 1950s American sitcom suburb, that people are not shagging, people are not fucking? Of course they are. God's sake, it's so naive to assume that they're not. It's just stupid. Okay, right, anyway, that aside. Tina's been missing for 2 weeks. And police, they got no substantial evidence. But they think, okay, it's got a lot of attention and we need to do something. Now we need to really look like we're on top of this, and we're currently not on top of it. Let's go over all the evidence again. They go back to Tina's car straight away. And it turns out they had actually missed some major evidence. How they missed this, I do not know. I mean, this is ridiculous that they missed it. They pull the boot of the car apart and they find blood. They find bottles of vodka and they find items of female clothing. How they didn't find it the first time they looked at the car, I have no idea. Straight after, they get a search warrant. They arrive at Ken's house and they go through his house in a really thorough way. They find a mattress that they had not previously seen, and the mattress has bloodstains on it. They find blonde hairs also. This is a major development in this case, absolutely huge. But they're missing the most vital element. They're missing Ken. Where is he? Well, he wasn't at home during the search, and there is no sign of him anywhere. The story that police are beginning to form at this point is that Ken has killed Tina in his house, hence the blood-stained mattress. And he's taken her body to the car, hence the blood in the car, and he's dumped the body somewhere. So now the search changes from looking for a runaway college girl to looking for a body. The police here employ the theory that, this has always interested me, it's the theory that actually, now that they're looking for a body, they're probably going to find it quite close to where they think the murder might have happened. It's an interesting one. It's kind of the theory that if you've killed someone, you're likely to dispose of a body close to where you are. And I really doubted this. at first. I mean, I've heard it before in different stories, and I always think, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you drive for miles and miles to get rid of a body? Why would you not want it as far away from you as possible? But there's lots of reasons. I suppose in a way it gives you a kind of control. You know, if you've got it near you, you're still somehow slightly in control of it. You can check on it. If it's nearby, you know where it is. But yeah, I don't know. It's an odd one. And when going through this case, I was like, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think police have done the wrong thing here. I think this body is going to be miles away. But I'm wrong. The police theory was right. They make a very grim discovery. They find Tina's body only a few miles away from Ken's house, and she's been put in the backyard of someone's property. She's found in some thick bush and tree area. So by now Ken's face is all over the news, and it doesn't take long for police to track him down and arrest him. When they have him in the police station, Ken confesses, and this is what he tells them. Tina had been at his house. They'd been having sex when they got into a physical fight. He pushed her hard across the room, and at which point she hit her head. Realising she was dead, he took her body to her own car, drove for a couple of miles, and buried her body. Ken says this, which is just bizarre. He says, Tina had been miserable in the last couple of months of her life, and he had decided to end it for her. What a dick. Fucking... honestly, is that your defence, mate? Is that what you honestly think your defence is? Fuck. So now we get to Ken and the arrest and the trial. Now stay with me here for a minute, because this gets a wee bit complicated. I had to really wrap my head round this bit of the judicial system. It is a little bit confusing, but it kind of goes like this. Ken, he doesn't have a lawyer. So he goes to court and he pleads guilty. He actually says to the judge, I want the punishment I deserve. So that's fine. However, the court, they refuse to enter his plea of guilty because he doesn't have a lawyer. And instead the plea gets entered as not guilty. I know, it's confusing, right? Not quite sure. Yeah, I'm no law expert, so I don't quite know what happens there. So he's saying, yeah, I did it. Yes, I did it. Punish me. The court says, well, you've not got a lawyer, so we're not accepting the guilty plea. So the court actually give Ken a lawyer. A man named Modeleski. Now he starts to immediately be problematic in this case. He starts to question the investigation. He starts to question the interviews with Ken. The fact Ken is saying, I did it, that doesn't seem to bother his lawyer, Mr. Modeleski. And again, we get into, and I've said this on the Facebook group, and thank you if you've given me stories, the guilty and the spin. I just love it. I get so obsessed with these ideas of when you know someone is guilty, but within the law system, things start to get spun, things start to get changed. I find it so interesting. Anyway, back to Modeleski. Now he's, what word am I looking for? He is, he's tricky. He's a tricky character. He gets hung up and obsessed with the fact that Ken has said in court previously, I'm guilty, but not said in court, I'm guilty of the murder of Tina. Now he takes this as a technicality, and he says, well, it's not clear that Ken means he murdered her. Well, mate, it is clear because he said it, but he muddies the waters. He manages to create a sort of confusion around it, and everyone's confused and going, now hang on a minute, has he actually confessed to the murder? I'm not sure what's happening here. So this guy is doing a good job of muddying everything just by spinning the words. So the town is now filled with media. Every motel is filled up with reporters, journalists, news channels. Townspeople are being interviewed. A townsperson called Fanny Weinstein. So actually sure. Fanny Weinstein, she says, "This is a sexy story. I understand why there is interest." Thanks, Fanny. But actually the real reason for the interest is this. Mr. Modilewski, he tells the press, he is going to rip apart the case of Tina's death and ensure that Ken walks away a free man. The case, like, it's shining a spotlight on so many different groups and so many parts of what Tina's life had been at this point. Quite unfairly, I think, in certain ways. So the university gets brought under scrutiny for not doing more. But I don't really know what more they could have done, the university. The escort agencies, they're also brought into the frame. And they're asked, why were you not doing more to protect Tina? I mean, again, could they stop her going out and giving out her own cards, working freelance? Well, no. And the town itself, it's asked, why are these motels allowed to facilitate these sex sessions? Well, if you're a business and someone's coming to you and they've got money, I don't know, do you know what I mean? So all these things are now thrown into the case of Tina Biggar. So the next stage of this is a hearing. Mr. Modilewski, he asks for a hearing to determine if Ken will stand trial for murder or not. During this hearing, he points out the massive flaws in police work. Some of the things that I already raised a minute ago. So he asks, why didn't they find blood in the car the first time? Why didn't they search Ken's house sooner? Is this a setup? Do they just need someone to be responsible for this case? Because it's now getting nationwide attention and the police look pretty fucking stupid by not being able to catch the killer. So have they zoned in on Ken and made him confess? In the hearing, Ken's lawyer claims that Ken was drugged by police to get a confession out of him, and that he was never ever read his rights correctly, so he didn't understand what he was saying. So how does the judge rule here? Well, he says, yeah, there were failings in this investigation, but Ken will stand trial for murder because there is enough evidence to convict. What happens next is this. While awaiting his court date, Mr. Modilewski convinces Ken not to go to court, to not put himself through a trial, and Ken agrees. They cut a deal with the prosecution that Ken will confess to the murder and receive a lesser sentence. The deal goes through and Ken is found guilty of second-degree murder and given life in prison without the possibility of parole. Escort speech 4. He arrived with a full pack of condoms, and he was ready. The agency said he was a regular. He had good reports, always clean, always respectful. Not this night. Respect was way down his list. I think if I'd been older, it might have been different. I'm older now, but on that night I wasn't, and it screwed me. I just didn't know what you did when a client was angry. The way he was angry, and he was in the room and we were on the bed, and I couldn't think of a way to get out of it except to pretend I needed the bathroom. He was pissed, so fucking drunk. I thought, fuck, what can I do here? Where could I go, or what could I pretend I needed to do? So I waited. I sat in the bathroom and I waited. What happens with some of the guys is they get so pissed before they come. I don't know why. Maybe they're scared, maybe they're nervous. But give them time and they'll pass out. He passed out on the bed and I left. And so ends the story of Tina Bigger. So of those 4 escort speeches, 2 of them were male and 2 of them were female. The first, the one you want more than sex asshole, was a female. The folder of photographs of the wife, that was a male escort speaking. The whispering words in the ear was female. And the one you just heard, the hiding in the bathroom until he'd passed out, was a male escort. In the name of balance, in the name of trying to just kind of understand the whole escort world, I didn't want to just zoom in on female escorts. And I didn't really want to just zoom in on male escorts. There's a funny thing here. I kept coming across this. It was really odd. All of the male escort interviews that I could find were really braggy. It was boastful. It was like these men were all wearing it as a badge of honour, some kind of like, yeah, just bragging about the lifestyle that it brought. And then, I don't know, it's just, yeah, there was just real bravado, real showboating about, yeah, I've been an escort and I took this woman to this place and this place. And it made me like, fuck off. These guys were just really annoying. And then I found this clip. This is a really short recording for you here. This is from a morning TV show in the UK called This Morning. And the 2 presenters have just spoken to a young female escort called Alexandra. And they're now on the phone with a male escort from England. Have a listen.
Right, we've got Liam on the line now. Good morning, Liam.
Hello.
Hello.
Hiya.
Now, you're 19 now, so being 18 wasn't that long ago. And in fact, it was a decision that you made at 17 that you've gone on to regret. What happened?
Well, it's similar to what Alexandra is doing now, was that I struggled with finance myself, and then I ended up becoming a male escort at the age of 17.
Right, OK.
OK. And so what would you tell, now you're 19, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I would tell myself not to do it and to get as much possible help as possible, and just to seek advice from everyone as possible, because I lost my best friend because of it, because he found out that I was doing it. And it's broken down some parts of the family and me friendship with him, because we were close friends from when we was about 6, 7 in school.
So you would tell your 18-year-old self not to do it?
Yeah.
But you're now 19.
Yeah.
And do you still occasionally do escort work?
I do at the moment, but it's just where I've just gone into full-time work. I have nothing to support myself with because I do live on my own.
Right, OK. So tough to stop if you're financial... Because like Alexandra,
that's the thing.
Was purely and entirely financially led. So if you didn't have to do that, you never would?
I wouldn't, no.
Wow.
I wouldn't do it unless I needed the money, which I obviously have needed for like the past couple of years.
Yeah. What would you say to her?
I would say to her, like, to be careful, be safe, use protection and everything, and always have a member of, like, a close friend tell him that you're going to do it, just in case something did go wrong, and even bring her along if you do go to a hotel. Put her in a different room that's close, so you can easily text her and say, I need help now.
Yeah. I mean, she obviously hadn't thought it through at all.
Thank you,
Liam,
Liam.
thanks for being so honest this morning.
Thank you.
Now, I felt that was important to include that, because the kind of world that I entered this week, the escorting world, it caused me issues. And I'll tell you what those issues are. I mean, this is essentially me doing a production meeting with myself, with everyone else, but that's okay. I sometimes get concerned being a male podcaster talking with a female voice, because the escorting stories that I was looking at very much from a female perspective, and sometimes as a male, I just wonder how that sits, how that lies. And I thought about getting a female to record some of those escort speeches that you heard, rather than me speaking them. And then I questioned that. I got myself in a right fucking tangle about it, because I was like, actually, is that the right thing to do? Because actually, am I then objectifying women by making a woman speak those words and they're not really her words? And I don't know. I'm just trying to be as socially aware as possible with the podcast. I'm very aware that there's a lot of men telling stories of women being killed, and sometimes sometimes I wonder if you need a woman's voice to speak the words that a woman speaks. I don't know. Anyway, that's a bit of a mess of stuff there that's just going on in my brain. And I think that about wraps it up from me for this episode. So I will finish by briefly saying thank you to all the new Patreon supporters. You cannot imagine how grateful I am to have people giving money on Patreon. Even the smallest, tiniest amounts. It's just incredible. Thank you. Get me on Twitter, get me on Instagram, get me on Facebook. I'm on all of them. And if you know a great story, if you know an extraordinary story, get in touch. Okay? Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.